Hey, hello, and good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back. I know it's been a couple weeks. I was out of town last weekend. I do apologize, but I wanted to get back on this weekend and get back on track. I just had no access to, excuse me, had no access to internet at all last week, so it's a little bit tough to get the training going. Pardon me, I have to get some water here. Gotta love that. The minute you're ready to go on, get a little tickle in your throat. So for those of you that don't know me, my name is Jason J. Hamilton. I'm a chartered retirement planning counselor, and I'm the admin of this group. And every week we try to bring you wonderful trainings to give you a lot of knowledge to help you retire with confidence. And we try to do that in bite-sized pieces so that you can continue to build your retirement knowledge and do the best you can to have the best possible retirement and completely have a wonderful time and not worry about running out of money. So today, I think I have an interesting subject for you. We're going to talk a little bit about health savings accounts and some advantages of putting some money in there over your IRA, for example, and to see maybe if that's a better move for you as you're thinking about putting your last few dollars into retirement over these next couple of years. So before that, though, I want to celebrate. We have hit 2,000 members in this group. Thank you so much for everybody who's been inviting friends and family in here. I really hope to provide a lot of value for everybody you know. It's really wonderful to see such a large group in here and people interacting. So if you catch this training at a later time, please feel free to put your questions and comments down below, and I'll do my best, as always, to get in there and respond and try to help you out the best I can. But for today's training, I know I didn't announce it ahead of time, but hopefully it will be good for you. And it's a little bit shorter than normal, but I do want to definitely give you something this week for you to think about and discuss, when it comes to your retirement planning. So let's just get right into the training and get it going today. Okay, so hopefully you can see me okay, and you can hear me okay. So what I want to talk about today is, should you invest your retirement savings in an HSA before an IRA? If you've never heard of an HSA, it stands for Health Savings Account. And you could typically invest in these accounts when you're when your health insurance is what's called a high deductible health plan. So those are typically like your silver or bronze plans. The gold plans typically don't qualify, so that's what you're looking at there. And most of you have some options with your employer to choose a different level of health coverage. If you choose a high deductible health plan, you may have an option to invest in what's called a health savings account. So what we're going to talk about today is some advantages of putting some money in here, even over your 401k or IRA, depending on your particular situation. So I'm going to give you 6 things today that I think will be really give you a lot of things to think about when it comes to making this decision. And let's get right into that today. So let's talk about 6 benefits of health savings accounts, which I think are the most amazing account. They are really, understated and underutilized when it comes to retirement planning. I think because for a while, some of the rules weren't quite clear, and they're really just not talked about, in all honesty. But there's some really great benefits, so I'm going to give you 6 of them today that I think will make you want to consider investing there versus your IRA. So let's talk about the first one here. So first one is, you may claim an income tax deduction for cash contributions made to an HSA, even if you do not itemize deductions on your income tax return. So we all know with the new tax laws that have gone into place for this year, we have a much higher standard deduction, so a lot fewer people will be itemizing. But a big benefit of contributing to an HSA is that it's going to count. It's going to reduce your taxable income for this year, even if you don't itemize. So that's a wonderful benefit. If you're thinking about planning for healthcare expenses, which we all should be, healthcare is going to be one of the most expensive things that you're going to have to pay for, most likely in retirement. So in contrast, any medical expenses must exceed 10% of your adjusted gross income before they may be deducted by an individual as itemized expenses on his or her income tax return. So anytime you have health expenses, to be able to deduct those, if you're over 65, I believe 7.5% now, so that's a little bit lower. But on average, a lot of folks in here are younger than 65, so I just put the 10% number in there. But if you don't have medical expenses that exceed 10%, you're not going to be able to deduct them. On the other hand, if you just put money in an HSA, you're actually able to pay your medical expenses from there and get that 100% tax deduction regardless of the amount. So should you do that or not, that's a different question. I actually, a lot of times will recommend people do not touch their HSA right now, and that they actually pay from cash flow for medical expenses, so we can keep this money in here. I'm going to show you why in just a second. It could be really, really powerful for you. So HSAs are what's called triple tax advantage. So any interest and earnings on any amounts held in an HSA, they accumulate tax-free. So very similar to an IRA, but they're also tax deductible, right? So that's another benefit as well. So you get a tax deduction this year, you get tax deferred or tax-free growth, and if you use it for medical expenses or any sort of qualified medical expenses, those distributions are 100% tax-free. So that's a big advantage over an IRA. Right, so the next thing I want to talk to you about is employer contributions. So any employer contributions to an HSA on behalf of an employee account owner do not result in taxable income. So depending on what type of plan you have, you may have to pay some sort of taxes on some of the income that goes into your retirement plan. When it goes to an HSA, there's no result in taxable income of any sort. So that's a huge benefit. Number 4, and this is big, distributions from an HSA to an account owner are tax-free as long as they are used to pay for qualified medical expenses. So anything that is deemed qualified, which is pretty wide open, but a lot of the like holistic health type expenses, which honestly I do believe in. For a lot of people, I've seen some wonderful things happen with holistic health services, but they may or may not qualify depending on the type of expense. So you want to get really clear on this before you use this money and expect to use it for a tax deductible service. So for example, last week, or it was I think week before, we had Jen in. So Jen is a holistic health coach for pre-retirees. Working with her may or may not qualify. So if you are technically what do they say, morbidly obese, or you may have diabetes or something like that, and you want to invest into a health program or health improvement program, there may be a chance that you can actually pay for that and have it as a qualified expense from your HSA. So it could be a big benefit, but you really want to double check with your tax professional or financial advisor, whoever you're working with, to make sure before you make that assumption. You don't want to end up at the end of the year with a non-qualified expense that you pulled out of there. Okay, it's really important. All right, number 5. So this is huge. Okay, so as over and over and over in this group, I see people talking about, RMDs, required minimum distributions. What do? I have this big taxable bill coming and money's going to have to come out of my IRA or 401k. Assets do not have to be distributed from an HSA until such time as the account owner dies. Okay, I should say passes away because I feel like die is a little bit of a little bit more of a brutal language, so I apologize for that. But the big thing we need to take away here is that you don't have to take any money out of here. So there's no RMD. So unlike an IRA, distributions from an HSA do not have to commence after the account owner reaches a certain age. So you can keep this money in here, similar to like a Roth IRA, that you don't have any RMDs. So you don't have to take this money out until way, way later and and what that means is you're going to have tax deferred growth for a lot longer, because in all honesty, if you're reasonably healthy at 70 and a half, which I think a lot of people are going to be, and more are going to be staying healthier longer as medical technology advances and we take care of ourselves and our diet and we exercise more, unlike 20, 30, 40 years ago, which wasn't talked about as much, this account is going to have a huge advantage over an IRA, because the IRAs are going to force you to take money out and cause taxes at 70 and a half. So however, okay, this is really important. Post-death, HSA distributions of substantial assets to a non-spousal beneficiary will result in substantial income taxes having to be paid by the beneficiary for the year in which the account owner passes away. So this is a disadvantage if all the money is going to go to a non-spousal beneficiary. So when it comes to your estate planning and where you want to direct your money and you want to direct your assets to, this particular money, you really want to make sure this goes to a spousal beneficiary if you're planning on distributing some money to some children before your spouse passes away. And that's just something that can be taken care of in your estate planning, and make sure it gets directed to the right sources. If you're single, again, you want to be aware of this. It could be dangerous if you're single and only have money that's only going to go to your kids. But there's other things we can do in estate planning when it comes to where to direct this money to avoid some of that. But I want you to be aware of that, because that could be a little bit tricky. But most folks, if you make it to 70, there's a very, very good chance that you're going to live to at least 85, 86, 88, if not longer. So in all honesty, I think it's worth the risk depending on your health situation. But you can also pay for things like long-term care insurance, long-term care out of your HSA as well. So it's a great account to tap prior to things like IRAs, Roth IRAs, and things like that. So when it comes to cash flow planning and really distribution planning, having HSA to add into the mix with your IRAs, your Roth IRAs, and your taxable accounts, we can get really, really tricky and have some wonderful ways to pay for your health care and your long-term care without raising a bunch of taxes. Okay, so this is a really smart thing to do early on. If anybody's listening to this and you're in your 30s or 40s or 50s and you have quite a few years until retirement, look into the HSA, look into the health savings account, because I'm finding myself recommending more and more that instead of loading more into your 401k, that we fill up that HSA first, because we can do a lot more things as I'm showing you here. Okay, so really, really important. And finally today, a great thing about HSAs is that they are portable and they may be rolled over into another HSA that offers better investment options, lower administrative expenses, things like that. So just like if you would think about rolling your 401k to an IRA, if you have only one HSA option with an employer, and maybe the expenses are a little high or the investment options are limited, which is very common, you can roll that over to another provider, at really any time, as far as I know, and get those expenses lower and have more investment options. But the idea is that we just get the money in here and that we're deferring the income right now and we're getting it invested as soon as we hit those limits. I think with HSAs, usually it's about $1,000 to $5,000 you need to accumulate before you can start investing, depending on the provider. And that just depends on who you're working with. So all really good things, but we have to be considerate of those as we're planning our investments and also keeping our expenses low, because at the end of the day, I want you to keep as much of your return as possible, and paying those away to just administrative expenses is silly sometimes. So you want to look at that and make sure you're doing all the best things that you can do possibly. So those are 6 things that I think are really important that you might want to consider when it comes to investing in an HSA, even before an IRA and before putting additional money in your 401k. So if you need help deciding if you should be funding an HSA or your 401k or IRA, I would love for you to schedule a complimentary retirement strategy consultation with me. You can go to kisplanning.com/apply. That's KIS, like keep it simple, planning.com/apply. What we'll do there is we'll spend about 45 minutes working on your retirement strategy, and it will be the best 45 minutes you spend getting clarity on what you should be doing, in what order, and you're going to walk away with a high-level game plan of everything that you need to do to make, well, I shouldn't say everything, but a big chunk of things that you need to do to get your retirement planning right. I offer these as a complimentary. If you ask anybody from this group who has hopped on with me before, if they've received value from this, I haven't had anybody say no yet. So, give it a chance. Let's schedule a call. Let's get to know each other. I will say this week I'm going to have much more limited spots. Okay, this week's going to be very limited. So if you're thinking about scheduling a call, get in there, get on my schedule as soon as you can, because this week is crazy. I'm very busy, but I do want to make time. I always make time to get some of these calls in each week so I can help out as many people as possible. All right. So for those of you that have questions, please drop them in the comments. I'm going to hop back over to the other screen here, see if I have any questions, and if not, we will wrap up for today. Let's see here. Let me see if I have any questions. Give me 1 second. If you do have questions, go ahead and drop them in the comments right now. I will stay on. I think we have a few here, so let's talk about that. I see a couple thumbs up from Jim. Yes, Jim is a fan of HSA. Jim is a tax professional, and all my tax professional friends love HSA, so they know what's up with that. Any questions, please drop them in the comments. I'm taking a look here to see if you have anything, and if not, that's okay. We'll wrap up for today. We'll make it a little bit shorter of a training than we have. But in this time, while I'm waiting for some questions to come in, I want to say hello to Jim. Hello, Jim. Great to see you. Susan, great to see you as well. Other Jim. Deborah, I haven't heard from you in a while. Great to see you. Dennis, wonderful to hear from you. Darla and Cheryl, thank you guys so much for joining today's training. If you have any questions, again, drop them in the comments. If not, that's just fine. As a reminder, we have these trainings typically every Sunday right around 2 o'clock. And these next few weeks are a little bit crazy. My brother got married this last weekend, so I'm helping him out with some things. And I was the best man, and so I was a little bit busy these last few weeks. So I'm just trying to do everything I can to provide as much time I can in the group and also make sure my family's taken care of. I'm sure you can understand that. But I love you guys so much. There's so much good conversation in this group. Please, if you have friends or family members that are coming close to retirement, I feel very confident that they're going to benefit from this group. I do my best to answer as many questions as I can. There's a lot of conversation that goes on, and there's a lot of great responses from folks that have been through some of these things ahead of time. So if nothing else, Mary Lou has a question. How do you know how to invest your HSA? So the way I look at it, Mary Lou, is okay, I'd never take one account on an island, right? So anytime I'm looking at somebody's investment strategy, I want to look at that from a comprehensive perspective. So with the HSA, a lot of times we have limited options. So what I'll do is take a stop in there and I'll say, okay, what do we have available in our HSA? And then I'll take a look at maybe 401k options or 403b if you're working in the public sector or you're a teacher or something. And then I'll look at maybe their IRA or any taxable accounts. And then I'm going to take into account, okay, what are all these other accounts invested in? And how does that align with what's available in our HSA? And we may make adjustments to the other accounts just to make sure that we're really running our investment strategy as a whole. You never want to take your one account on an island unless it's for a specific purpose. But if you know you have healthcare expenses coming up, do you want to be invested in the most risky thing possible? Probably not, right? You want to have some things that are some stable value so that you can pull from that money if you know you have some healthcare things coming up. Maybe you have a surgery coming up or things like that. But in general, you can invest it very similar to the rest of your portfolio when it comes to asset allocation. It's just a matter of what you have available for your investment options. So I think it's a really great question, but we want to include it in our comprehensive strategy unless there's a specific purpose that we have coming up. So hopefully that answers your question. How much can you invest per year? It depends on if you're single or if you have a family. I believe right now it's about $3,300 for a single person, about $6,700 for a family. I don't have my handy. I have a cheat sheet usually I keep next to me. It's in my binder on the shelf back there, so I don't have that handy. But it's about $3,300 for a single person, about $6,700 for a family. So if you can put as much money in there as possible, if you're already maxing out your 401k and your IRA, and HSA is a wonderful place to go. If you really have to decide where the dollars are going to go first, typically you want to get the match at work, right? That's free money, 100% match, right? So take that. And then you have some decisions between, do I do Roth, right? Maybe a Roth IRA, or do I do an HSA? Depending on how much money you have in the other accounts, an HSA for me is going to have a big weight as far as where I really want to go if there's some good options in there, because just as some of the benefits we talked about today, healthcare is not going down, at least for the next few years, until we get robots, to come in and take over what we're having to pay these doctors, hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars for. So until we start seeing the robots come in and take over surgeries and diagnosis with artificial intelligence, which, by the way, it seems like that's coming, probably 10 or 15 years. But until then, the HSA is going to have a huge value for you, especially when it comes to paying for your long-term care insurance, and any other qualified medical expenses. So there you go, Jim. Jim helped me out. $3,450 for a single person. Thanks, Jim. I appreciate that. I was a little bit off there, a couple $100, but over $3,000 a year. So it can be a great place to put some money if you have a little bit extra retirement money that you want to keep the government's hands off of for now and keep it tax deferred until you're ready to use it. So I think that's all the questions I'm seeing at the moment here. So hey guys, I love you so much. Thank you so much for joining in. That's our training for this week. If you're watching this at a later time besides Sunday at 2 p.m. Pacific West Coast time, feel free to put your questions in the comments, and I will jump in later to answer them the best I can. And I will see you guys next week and all throughout the week, obviously, in the group. Thank you so much. Have a great day, and we'll talk soon, all right? Bye-bye.